We're a little bit ahead of time in our schedule. Is that, yeah?
Yep, we're good. Thanks.
We're a little bit ahead of time. That'll work. I'll check. Okay, how's that? Is that okay? Okay. So we're a little bit ahead of time, and I know if we finish a little early, people will, that'll increase our evaluations. We'll do that. But we're going to slow down a little bit because we did some of the basic now, but now we're going to start doing more hands-on work. Peggy did a fabulous job with getting us thinking about mission. And when we think about mission, as she said, it's the foundation. We see on our logic motto, it's the foundation of everything that we do. It's also the reason why we're in business. And so if we're always keeping that in mind, that's why we come to work every day, that's why we're here, then it helps to guide the rest of the things. The next, so if mission is here, and over here is what services do we provide, we're missing something in the middle, and that's the part I'm going to talk about, which is needs assessment. How do we know what the community needs are? And so we're going to spend some time talking about that. And we're going to break it into parts. The first part is going to be, what is community? And the second part is, what is a needs assessment? And how do we determine what the needs are of a community? So let me ask you a question. Give me a definition, your definition of a community.
Neighborhood.
A neighborhood?
Population, specialized population.
A specialized population, and that could be lots of different things, but it's as Peggy was saying in the mission discussion, we're talking about who it is we're working with. Other ideas about a community? This room, exactly. And that's the issue. With the community, it can be very broad things. It can be our family. If we have a large family, we might think of them as a community. Our entire city, the state of Massachusetts. Depending on what we're focusing on, community can be very different things. Even in our programs, what our community that we're talking about can be different. If we're in child care, our community might include children, whereas in some of the other programs where that's not our primary customer. And we'll talk more about customers in a minute. So to ground us in what we're talking about, if you will turn in your workbook to page 13. And the first two learning objectives Peggy covered in her section on mission. If I can, I don't know where the marker is. Oh, thank you. I don't know if you guys don't mind reading again. Can you start with the third bullet and read so we'll know what we're going to be focusing on?
Participants identify the difference between family, agency, or community needs statements.
Next one. Oh, please, I'm sorry.
I know you're going to turn this, guys. I'm going to give it to Gina. I'm going to Gina. Take Gina. Okay.
Participants understand that the proper identification of the problem sets the path for the solution.
Participants recognize that identification of resources is an important part of the assessment process.
Participants learn the importance of gathering data from multiple sources to assure a comprehensive community assessment.
Participants are introduced to data analysis and prioritization processes.
Great, thank you very much. All right, and so now, just so that we're on the same page, we're going to flip ahead to page 21. So we talked about what a community is, and that it could be a lot of community, a lot of different things. But if you think about a particular community, how do you figure out what are the needs in the community? Yeah, So you have to find out by asking. And there are different ways of doing that. One way might be a survey. One may be looking at other people who provide services in the area. There could be lots of different ways to do that. But what we need to do is to be able to gather that information. And when we talk about needs assessment, and we're talking about helping ourselves and helping the community identify what the needs are, that piece can be kind of challenging. So if we're looking at needs assessments, one of the things that we want to look at is what are some needs that our communities have. And CSBG has identified a list of services, and in your workbook it's on page 22. And these are the categories that CSBG funding has us addressing. And there's lots of different ways that we can do that. But it's been decided, as Jess talked about the history of CSBG, that if we're addressing these service categories, then the work that we do is really going to increase the well-being of the community. And that's part of when we talk about self-sufficiency and other things as we move forward. It's in these areas that we're going to be focusing. But if you look at the areas themselves, they're really broad. And it's difficult to say how we're going to, if we take them just as they're listed here, how are we going to move forward with that? And so back down here again with our 6 national goals, they have helped us to break it out. And so the ways in which we're looking at the particular service areas are family outcomes, community outcomes, and agency outcomes. So we're going to do a little bit of work around that just to get a clearer idea of what we're talking about. How many people think education is an important area for voters? As in most groups, hands go up with that. So if we take it and choose that as one of our areas here, and look at the 3 different categories of goals: community, agency, and individual. If you thought about education, what would be an individual need when it came to education? Talking about people themselves, individuals themselves.
Access.
Yeah, so access to high quality education. In your book on page 23, they're talking about another one might be that individuals do not have high school diplomas. So, thank you. And it can be because there's not access to programs, and we'll talk about that. But one of the challenges for individual people may be just not having a diploma, and that really impacting their work, their job, seeking ability. So that's an individual or family level. Thank you. So if you look at the next one, a community level need would be our community does not have youth who are prepared to take productive roles as adults. So now we're looking broader at the whole community, that because individuals or families, because they don't have high school diplomas, then as a community, the teens or the young people aren't ready to take their roles as adults in the community. And then the third one looks at the agency. And as they say here, the agency has need for additional resources to establish or expand a GED program. So does it make sense as we're doing this? We're looking at it from different levels. And to be able to really achieve our outcomes, we need to be able to address that, and by making them more specific, as we're talking about our strategies a little bit later, we can have them match. Because a strategy for working with families would be very different than a strategy, say, for the agency, which might be about funding or additional staff or those kinds of things. And when they don't match, then it becomes really hard as we're talking down the road about how are we going to measure this? You know, we keep talking about we do great work, but how do we measure it? And sometimes we'll see as we move forward, The problem with measuring is not being really clear on the goal that we're measuring and how do we set up indicators so that we'll be able to look at that. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to do a little activity right now. So if you turn to page 24 in your workbook. Okay. So when we're looking at the community need, I'm going to ask you to think about your community, whatever it is. If we're talking about, probably for this activity, if we talk about the community being your clients, the CTI clients, who you're serving. If you had to, if you look in the shaded box, the instructions for the activity are for you to individually, so even though you're at a table, the first part I want you to do as your own, and there's a space at the bottom for you to list it. Identify 3 issues, concerns, barriers, or challenges, or other situations facing the clients in your community, and write them below using a few words or a sentence for each community, each family, agency, or community needs. Okay, so I don't want you to just write education, because again, that's too broad. If you think of the area that you're thinking about, think about the need. So as we said, for education, if it's a family need, we're looking at the individual or family. So think about the issues that you think are most pressing in your community. And before you do it, look at the rules under that. I was just saying, you're not going to use just one word because it makes it too broad. And as you're identifying this, the next thing that we're going to be looking at is which type. Is it family, is it agency, or is it community? So when you're writing your need, keep that in mind that we're going to have to define which of those it is. And you want to, as it says here, you want to refrain to say, well, it's all 3 of them. Because in general, some of the needs, most needs, do have 3 components to it. But you want to identify one or the other of the 3. So take about 5 minutes, and in your workbook or on another piece of paper, list 3 pressing community needs that you think exist for the people that you work with. Any questions? Now, individually to start off with, and then we'll share it as a group. Make sure as you're listing it that you identify whether it's family, community, or agency.
very good question. It's a very nebulous term. I'm not really sure.
Just services.
It's a linkages as it relates to social linkages.
Okay, I see some people have stopped writing, so once you have identified your three, now I want you to go back and number them in priority. Which do you think is the highest priority? Give a 1, second, and third. Okay, so now what we're going to do, since we have a really large group, is I'm going to have each table, for these first 6 tables, at your group, to start to share, each person share, what is your number 1 need that you've identified? And this isn't about, as a group, deciding on one right now, or saying, oh yeah, this is the number 1, I agree, or talking each other into something. It's just to identify what it is, and then as a group to decide, is the level that you identify family, community, or agency? Do people agree that that is the correct level that for the need that you identified? Does that make sense? Okay. In the back, since you're a little bit spread out, maybe we can divide you in, well, this is kind of a natural group, so maybe you guys, and if maybe the 3 of you, lost two goes there, the 3 of you can kind of pull your chairs here and work with this group. Or I tell you what, it's easier here. All right.
So I had to ask the transportation. So families lack access to transportation. As an agency, we as an agency struggle to get clients where they need to be to access the services they need. We need some integrated, comprehensive, and flexible slate of transportation options.
I didn't even think of that.
about a minute more to share your priority areas.
It's individual, family, community, or agency.
You get the job, so you're like, hi, right? Here's your service, back down. So even though you have your job, it's everything.
And I think it's
Take
a
care.
program.
They do need transportation.
But it's been like that.
Okay, we're going to start to share as a group. Come back over here. Get too close to it. Well, we're going to start in the back since we haven't asked you all to start reading yet. So in the group back here on the left, will you share one of your priority areas? And Peggy has offered to be our scribe and list them here. So what we're going to do is you're going to read out or call out one of your priority areas and let us know, do you say it's a family, a community, or an agency? And we'll see as a group, does that make sense to us? All right, back table?
So we had low education levels, and more, to be a little bit more specific, we focused on learning gaps that are population-wide. So like having dropped out and then not re-engaging back into like the educational system years later. So those gaps, and we looked at that as a community.
Okay, so that you're not talking about individual people aren't having it, you're saying that the community has, so if you started off with the community, then can you restate it one more time? The community?
So the community has a lack of resources to address learning gaps.
Okay, okay. Does that make sense to people that that's a community level? Okay. To address the learning gaps. Thank you. Is there a separate group in the middle? Okay.
One of ours was low-income working families needing subsidized evening daycare.
Great. Low income, working families, need evening subsidized childcare. Family, community, or agency? Families, yeah. Very good. This table in the back?
One of the issues we came up with was mental health and drug addiction, and it could go either way. There's both community and family, depending on how you word that issue.
So word it for me, in one way or the other.
Could be lack of resources for mental health and drug addiction in the community,
Okay.
and it could be, I guess, lack of engagement with clients in mental health and drug addiction with resources.
Okay. So clarify the second one for me again. The first one, lack of resources for mental health and drug addiction, you said was a community level. Is there a way of play? This is really, it's really hard to to get it to do that?
Challenges navigating drug and mental health resources.
Perfect, so families or individuals have challenged or have challenges in navigating the addiction or mental health services. Perfect. Now it's become a family indicator. Very good, very good. This table.
Go ahead.
There's always that kind.
We have access to affordable and safe housing.
Okay. What kind of level?
I want to say community.
Okay, okay. So the community has a lack of affordable housing. Good job. All right, next table.
Individuals do not have safe, stable, or affordable housing.
Okay, so another housing indicator, but now it's a family. Can you say it one more time?
Individuals do not have safe, stable, affordable housing.
Great. You guys are good. Okay, this table.
We said the same one, but we also got employment and job training.
So, but your number one was, you said the same one was housing?
Yes, housing.
Okay,
Well,
was-
number one, yeah.
Was it a family level or a community? Can you read your housing one?
We need of affordable housing in the community.
In the community, so we can just slash mark. Peggy, you can just slash this one here, so we won't have to write it again. Thank you. This group.
Ours was also lack of affordable housing.
Oh, community level, another slash. Thank you. This group.
Individuals need additional skills to get jobs.
Okay. Individual, so that one's a family one, right? This group?
This is a community one.
Okay.
Entry-level jobs do not pay enough to support a family even when working full-time.
Perfect. You guys, it's like you work together, so one does the individual, one does the community, and it's, you know, it really is important to get our minds around this. As I was preparing for this module, one of the things they kept saying was, you need to understand these too. And the more I do this, and the more I hear how you present it, it makes it clearer for me as well. Oh, thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't even repeat it.
You just speak.
In the last table, while we're giving Peggy a chance to,
We're battling over two of them.
okay,
Families lack mentors to assist clients in setting goals.
okay. Families lack mentors. To assist them in setting goals.
Yeah. Just knowing how to manage their life, you know. I think a lot of people come from something, you know, they repeat their patterns and everybody else repeats their generational pattern, you know.
So it's managing life, so it could be a lot of the different service categories that were listed when we're talking about that. So it really is, you could probably repeat that under education, under self-sufficiency, under a lot of those. So that's great. Thank you guys for doing that work. So because it's a big group, let me ask you to raise your hands. We're going to do a little bit of counting right now. So how many people identify a community or lack of resources around education and the learning gap? If you had a number one at your table, because we just took one from each table, if you had a number one priority around addressing the lack of resources around the learning gap, raise your hand. It doesn't have to be worded exactly like that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, so we have 4, so I can thank you. So we'll use a different color. Okay, so we have 4 here. How about low-income working families need evening subsidized childcare? how as we hear them, it's like, oh yeah, that was a good one. But so for this purpose, lack of resources for mental health and drug addiction in the community. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm just going to here. Families have challenges navigating drug or mental health services. What the same, okay. So yeah, so it's just at a different level. The community has a lack of affordable housing. Whoa, okay. Too many to count, but I will count. Hands up, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 27. Okay. Individuals do not have safe, affordable housing. So the same issue, but now as individuals. How many? Okay. Okay. Individuals need additional skills to get jobs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 50. Entry-level jobs don't pay enough to, even if people get them, don't pay enough.
We can't even.
And the last one, families lack mentors to assist them in setting goals around all things in life. That's 4. 4 and an extra hand. Okay, so clearly in this process, our number 1 was housing. And it was housing at a community level. We may play with these a little bit more as but we hear you, and we talked about this as well. Housing, no matter where we do this, housing tends to be in this area one of the really critical issues. And so we'll work more with that going forward. So thank you all for your work with that. One of the things I wanted to just talk about, we talked about community, and we talked about getting from community to what are the services we need to provide, was the whole piece of needs assessment. So this was a sample of a needs assessment right here, asking you as key informants who are experts in the community, asking you what you think. Taking all of that information down, and then doing a little bit of consensus building. What was the priority area? Could have gone any way, but it was interesting that, and seeing that, they really shook out differently. And so part of it, as we're thinking about needs assessment, whether it's within our organization, whether it's with other key informants, other community agencies, or if we're talking about asking individuals, what are the issues that they're facing the most? That's just one example of how you might do a needs assessment.
Tina?
Yes?
On page 22, one of the service categories is linkages.
Yes.
What is that?
Linkages. Can somebody, planners in the room, anybody, talk a little bit about linkages? Peggy?
Planner. Linkages often refers to making the connections with other organizations. For instance, we talked about substance abuse and drug addiction, which is a huge need, a critical need in the community today. We are not a substance abuse agency. However, what we can do is make the linkage, the connection to those agencies that are substance abuse agencies, and make appropriate referrals on behalf of our clients who need those services. So linkages is really linking together. We don't have to do all of the work, but we have to be able to link and connect to other agencies, and that's what they mean by linkages.
All right, so we have taken one more step forward in our logic model, and I have an N for a needs assessment. And we're gonna put that right here on the first one. So that it's on top of our mission, because we know our mission guides our work. But the next thing is identifying what are the needs in the community. So as I was saying, we did one kind of assessment there. But the next thing is to look at, again, at our community. So who are the customers that we serve? We're on page 25 in your workbook. And going back to Drucker, and we have our list of questions here, his second question is, who are our customers? And the third one is, what does the customer value? So let me ask you a question first. What do you call the people that come to you for services? What term do you use? Clients? Clients? Families? Participants? Does anybody use the word customer? You know, it's in